2311 Racing and Farmer Motorsports have filed a motion to dismiss NASCAR's counterclaim against them, and many awesome NASCAR throwback schemes have been officially unveiled over the course of the last couple of days. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2025 Brand Heritage scheme that we'll see at Darlington. This is a throwback, of course, to his 2024 car. Scheme's okay in my opinion. I do like the colors of it. I wish they did a throwback for the weekend, but the scheme does look solid. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tyler Reddick's 2025 McDonald's scheme that we'll see at Darlington. I think as its own scheme, it looks really, really epic. I love the colors on it, and sometimes teams don't need to do a throwback. I think it looks really, really good. I love the colors on it, and I think McDonald's did a really good job on their guidelines as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Cinders' 2025 Jack Link's Menard scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Scheme's alright in my opinion. I do like the change of it with the Jack's Links coming in. The car looks good. I love the red. I love the yellow, and it's some pretty good looking colors for this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Grant Enfinger's 2025 Grant County Mulch scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. This is different than the other Grant County Mulch schemes we've seen from Grant Enfinger in the past. I do like the red on it this time. The number's in a good position as well. I think the colors on it do look really good, and they pop as well. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Hemrick's 2025 Gates Hydraulic scheme that we'll see in 5 races in 2025, including this weekend at Martinsville. Same scheme from last year that Christian Eck has had, but nothing really changed with it. But honestly, it does look solid. You really don't need to make changes to this car. It does look pretty good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Todd Gillen's 2025 Color Tech scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Scheme's okay in my opinion. Obviously, as it says on the scheme, it's a good looking colored car with a lot of different colors on it. It's pretty solid, not amazing, but it does look pretty good, and it will definitely pop on the track. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Noah Gragson's 2025 A&W scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. This is one of my favorite paint schemes so far of 2025. I love the A&W on it. They do a really good job utilizing the sponsorship placement on this car. I love the brown. I love the white. Everything really works well with this car, and it's going to be really nice to see on the track at Martinsville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Sieg's 2025 Lightning Southwest scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Not much to say about this one. There's not much going on with it. It's good to see a new sponsor for Kyle Sieg, though, but it's not my favorite paint scheme I've seen so far. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is John Hunter Nemechek's 2025 Drive Value scheme that we're going to see at Nashville. Scheme is alright in my opinion. It's good to see Drive Value stepping up and sponsoring. I think they're working with the team very closely this year. The scheme's okay. We'll see how we can do in this car at Nashville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Connor Zilla's 2025 Exalta scheme that we'll see in a couple weeks at Bristol. I really love this scheme. The colors work very well. I love the black. I like the red. I like everything about it. It's one of my favorite Connor Zilla schemes I've seen so far this year. It looks really, really good. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Casey Mears' 2025 Coble Enterprises scheme that we'll see on Sunday at Martinsville. This is a change because Go Hitch Go is no longer sponsoring the team for the weekend. I think the car does look pretty good. The colors pop on this one overall. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack later this week at Martinsville. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Martinsville purse money for this weekend. So every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockets puts out the purse money for the event. And according to Bob, for the Cup race, it's $11,055,250. For the Xfinity race, it's $1,651,939. And for the truck race, it's $782,900. Some solid purse money for the weekend, at least for the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series. Obviously, with the TV money coming in for the year, they're getting a lot more money this year. Xfinity, solid money as well, almost $2 million. Pretty good in my opinion. Trucks, once again, they're struggling. That's why they don't have a full field for the weekend, unfortunately. I really hope that the Truck Series down the road can increase their purses so they can have more money coming in down the road. But other than that, it's not that bad. At least Cup and Xfinity's good. But personally, I think that the Truck Series is not doing good when it comes to the purse money. And it could definitely be a lot better, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Indianapolis 500. As it was reported by Nathan Brown from the Indy Star that the Indy 500 camping for this year has already sold out 3 to 4 weeks earlier than it did last year, and infield camping is sold out and good to go. This is a really huge deal. Obviously, the Indy 500 has been growing a lot in recent years when it comes to their popularity, and we know the Indy 500 has been having a higher number of ticket sales. One of those big reasons being is that Kyle Larson, once again, in 2025 is showing up to try to run the Indy 500 after having a really strong run in the Indy 500 2024, but also it's really the biggest race for IndyCar. So you got to have people that are going to show up, otherwise your series is in a lot of trouble, which, let's be real, it really is in a lot of trouble currently at the moment. But I think this is a big deal nonetheless for sure, and pretty exciting to see that the Indianapolis 500 has officially sold out, at least on the camping side. Tickets are still available for the main event, but it's nice to see that the Indy 500 has officially sold out for this year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. As it was reported by Trey Ryan, aka NASCAR Insights, the Truck Series that there have only been 17 total DNFs to the first 4 Truck Series races of 2025. That is diffused through 4 races in Craftsman Truck Series history. And keep this in mind, most of those came at Daytona and Atlanta. I believe we had about 4 or 5 in the race at Daytona, and I think we had maybe a couple at Atlanta as well. I think there's only maybe 1 or 2 DNFs at Las Vegas, and I don't think there was a single DNF or maybe only 1 DNF at Homestead Miami Speedway. Despite the fact that the Truck Series maybe doesn't have the most talented field pool right now, there definitely is no question of the talent. At least there's good talent, and there's also less crashing happening on the track because you do have less trucks that are in the field and less trucks having mechanical gremlins, among other things. So I think that's really playing a role on why we're seeing less trucks falling out of races. It's still really awesome to see, though, for sure, and I think it's great that we're going to see less trucks falling out of races going forward. I think that may change this weekend or later tonight in the race. We'll just have to wait and see, but nonetheless, I think it's great to see that less trucks are falling out of races and more trucks are finishing races every single time. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Racer. As it was announced last night that Racer has officially acquired MAV TV and they'll be rebranding MAV TV to the Racer Network going forward. Now, one thing that was noted by Adam Stern, who reported on this, that it sounds like that nothing is going to be changing in regards to staffing and all the program that is on MAV TV currently at the moment, whether it's Lucas Oil stuff, among other things. Nothing's going to be changing on that front. The only thing that's changing is the name. Racer Magazine has been growing their branding in regards to networking. They've got a lot of big personalities. I think Kelly Crandall still works with them from time to time. And Marshall Pruitt and Chris Medlin also work at Racer currently at the moment. And now they're rebranding MAV TV, which MAV TV, unfortunately, they just don't have the popularity they used to. Of course, they no longer have the Chili Bowl anymore. They had it for a long time. That's no longer there. And they don't have ARCA anymore. That's a big thing that was really helping them. So with Racer coming in and rebranding it, I think this could be a really big deal for the network as a whole, with its future being a little bit uncertain currently at the moment. So I think it's a pretty big deal. Again, nothing's expected to change in regards to some of the stuff going on there, but to me, I think it's an awesome deal to see that MAV TV is changing up their name to Racer for 2025 and going forward into the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Greg Biffle. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Greg Biffle has been officially confirmed that he will drive the pace car for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Darlington Raceway. Greg Biffle, of course, one of the more underrated NASCAR drivers of all time, around 20 wins in NASCAR Cup competition. Of course, won the 2005 and I believe the 2006 Southern 500s. And also, of course, Greg Biffle's won a lot of big races in his time and has also won Xfinity Series and Truck Series championships and came very close to being the only driver in NASCAR history to win championships in all 3 of NASCAR's top divisions. Greg Biffle has been more active in the sport over the last year or so. We know he's been interested in coming back and doing some racing, but obviously he needs to get paid by NY Racing for that to happen. But I think it's great that he is going to be back in the sport in a way. He's been doing a lot of stuff in the communities. Obviously, what happened with the hurricane last year and helping with the communities there. And I think that he should be in the Hall of Fame just for what he did last year. But overall, I think it's pretty great to see that he's going to be back at the racetrack, and I think it's cool that he'll get the opportunity to drive the pace car when we do end up getting to Darlington. Pretty exciting stuff overall, and I think it's great that he'll get a chance to drive the pace car next week at Darlington. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about uncontrolled tires. Now, Bob Pockers reported yesterday afternoon that NASCAR had officially updated the rules in regards to uncontrolled tires going forward. If you do have an uncontrolled tire that goes even through a pit stop in a pit box that is through an opening that is not being used for the race, you still will receive a penalty. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that is to the end of the line, or you'll have to come down if you have it during a green flag segment, and you'll have to come through and serve a pass-through penalty, which is kind of the normal rules. That had not been in the rules, I believe, prior to this time, but they've done and gone ahead and updated those rules because we've seen some issues in regards to uncontrolled tires, and obviously NASCAR wants to keep things very, very safe, which I respect them for that because safety should be one of the most number one priorities, and I get that there's probably going to be some confusion on some areas there, but I think when it comes to uncontrolled tires, this should be a no-brainer. You don't want to see tires going flying, and you don't want to see tires going all over the place and having issues on the track. So to me, I think this is actually a really good change on NASCAR's end. Sometimes I don't agree with the changes they do end up making, but I do agree with this change, and overall, I think it's actually a positive change, and I think it's a good one they've gone ahead and done. Pretty good to see that they've made this change because I think safety should be the number one priority for the sport. Good change overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dollar Tree. As there was a report by Adam Stern on Wednesday morning that Dollar Tree is officially selling Family Dollar and will be ending the merger that they've been having over the course of the last couple of years. Dollar Tree, of course, was a big association on the NASCAR side of things, and this is a really, really big deal because Family Dollar, of course, has been sponsoring multiple drivers at that organization. They sponsored Eric Jones, and of course, they have sponsored John Hunter Nemechek in the last couple of seasons since they joined the team in 2024. So this is really an unfortunate situation for the team because losing Family Dollar is going to be a big deal in regards to that. Now, could they keep sponsoring through the remainder of the year? That is certainly possible. I'd have to think that their commitment will still go through the remainder of the year. But Dollar Tree and the Family brand have been with, like I said, Legacy, and that's one of the big reasons why Legacy Motor Club hasn't had to go find a lot of outside sponsors. But now it seems like with Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, I should say, ending that merger, that is going to affect Legacy Motor Club in a pretty big way because it is a sponsor that they had for a lot of races this year. So it's a really sad to see overall to see a company like this kind of going, but also the merger just hasn't been good. They've had to close a lot of their doors in a lot of the stores across the country because the economy isn't in the best position at times. But to me, I think this doesn't, again, it's not shocking to see this, right? We've been seeing stuff like this going on, and we've kind of been honestly expecting something like this to really, really happen. So while I'm disappointed to see this news, it doesn't shock me, it doesn't surprise me, and stuff like this doesn't really surprise me because when you have companies that are not doing as good, sometimes you're going to end the mergers that you have. I do think it will affect Legacy in regards to finding some sponsorship, and now they're going to have to look for some other sponsors going forward, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Andretti Global. As it was announced and reported by IndyCar that the number 26 team, which is Colton Herta's organization that he drives for, the number 26 team has been issued a penalty for failing post-race tech after the IndyCar race at Thermal Club. Because of this, they have lost 10 championship points. All the money that they have received from the event has been taken away, and they received a $50,000 fine. Now, Andretti Global did make a response in regards to this penalties, and they basically said that they were not happy with the decisions that IndyCar made. They're not going to appeal it, which I don't believe IndyCar really has an appeal board in regards to penalties like this, but they were not very happy with the penalty. Now, apparently it was something in the rear is what they're saying is where they got the penalty, which is really unfortunate. Now, one fortunate thing for Colton Herta is this does not affect Colton Herta. Colton Herta will still get to keep his driver points. This will only affect the team as a whole, I think, in the owner's points. So, for Colton Herta, at least it's a positive that he isn't going to get any sort of major penalty because he's not the one who works on the car, which I think is how it should be. I think a team should be the ones affected on the owner point side of things. I don't think a driver should be affected when they're not the ones that are controlling and working on the car. But for the 2016, we know this is a big year for Colton Herta. We know there's a lot of talk of him going to Formula One with the Cadillac brand in 2026. And there's a very good chance that is going to end up happening. So for Colton Herta to have something like this happen, you can't have penalties like this because it will affect your team. So I think for them, it's really unfortunate, right? Because for Andretti, I don't think they want to get found cheating in any way, shape, or form. Because this is like the first cheating scandal we've had of the year. And we all go back to what happened with Penske, with the push-to-pass scandals. So we've got a penalty coming out early in the season, which again, I think is really unfortunate, right? Because you don't want penalties really affecting the outcomes of championships, among other things. But when a team is getting caught cheating, it is really, really unfortunate, and it sucks for the teams that the drivers who don't do anything or not at fault for those situations. But at the same time, if a team, like I said, is doing some stuff and some fishy stuff, you got to hand out penalties in those situations. So tough break there for Andretti. It's only 10 points, so it's not much. But when you got Alex Plo's already won 2 races to start this year, points are going to be very critical, especially as we get farther into the year and farther into the season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Anthony Alfredo. As it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that Anthony Alfredo will drive the number 62 for Beer Motorsports in late April at Talladega Superspeedway. This will be Anthony Alfredo's second attempt to make a NASCAR Cup Series race in 2025, as Anthony had attempted to qualify for the Daytona 500, and unfortunately, if I'm not mistaken, he failed to make the Daytona 500 this year. Anthony Alfredo, of course, is driving full-time for Young's Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, and so far in 2025, it's been a solid year for his standards, but they've also been caught up in some big crashes and some big incidents. For Anthony, I don't think there is going to be a full field. There probably actually will be a full field for the race, but I don't think that there are going to be more than 40 cars showing up, so he should be able to make the field. And honestly, I would watch for this team because, if I'm not mistaken, the last spring race at Talladega Superspeedway, Anthony Alfredo was able to finish inside the top 5 with Beer Motorsports. And this could be a team that could have an outside chance and opportunity of going to victory lane. And in my opinion, Anthony Alfredo is one of the more underrated drivers that are currently in NASCAR at this particular moment. So I think he's going to have a solid run. We don't know the rest of the schedule for this car for the year. I'd have to think they are going to run at Daytona in the summer with Anthony, more than likely, probably not Parker Retzlaff, and I would have to think that we're going to see this team at Talladega Superspeedway in the fall later this year as well. So I think that the schedule will probably be Daytona, Talladega, then Daytona, Talladega once again. So we'll see what happens for Anthony, but I think he does have a great chance and opportunity here, and I think he'll run very, very well for Beard Motorsports when we do get to Talladega Superspeedway in about a month from now. Glad to see he's getting the chance and opportunity for drive for them. I think he's going to be very competitive with them at Talladega Superspeedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. Now, yesterday, Charles Deneke, who was on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio yesterday, spoke about the really strong start for Bubba Wallace and him at the beginning of 2025 and coming off having a really strong run at Homestead Miami Speedway. And Charles Deneke says that he believes he and Bubba Wallace can make a deep playoff run in 2025, and they feel like they could make the playoffs this year just on pure pace and speed, and they feel like they can win races at the start of the season. So far for Bubba Wallace in 2025, which I actually agree with what Charles Deneke and Charles Deneke is saying, I think that this team has been off to a much stronger start in 2025. Yes, Bubba Wallace only has 2 top 10s to start the season, but let's go through all the races. Bubba Wallace had a very strong car at the Clash, finished inside the top 5. Bubba Wallace had a really good run at the Daytona 500, was inside the top 5 and top 10 majority of the race, led a ton of laps as well, gets caught up in a crash running up front. Then, of course, Atlanta. I believe he got a top 10 finish in that race, was up front. I don't think he led any laps in the race, but he ran very, very well and led some laps in the good portion of the event. Then we get Dakota. Bubba Wallace had really, really good speed there. Qualified in second position. Won a stage in the race. Finished around 20 because I believe he got spun, but Bubba Wallace still finished inside the top 20, one of his better road course races. Then you think about the next week at Phoenix. Running inside the top 10, has a brake rotor failure, and finishes out of the race. Then we get to the next race at Las Vegas. Had one of the top 5 cars all day long. Gets caught up in the incident with Ryan Blaney, and the car is never the same. And then we get to Homestead. Runs top 10 all day, leads a ton of laps, and finishes in third place. I like the speed from the number 23 team currently at the moment. They're off to a strong start this year, and I really believe that Bubba Wallace is going to have a continued strong season. I realistically think Bubba Wallace can make the playoffs, and if this team can continue to have the sustained speed that they've had to start the year, I can see Bubba Wallace making a deep playoff run this year. I'm not saying he's going to make the championship 4, but I think round of 8 is certainly possible. And I compare this a little bit to like when Rudy Fiegel got moved up with William Byron, and William Byron moved to that next big level. I think Bubba, for him, he's moved to his next big level, and I think he is a very much likely driver who can make the playoffs this year. He's 36 points above the cutoff line, so he's off to a great start, and we're going to track where he's been very good in the past. So I think he's going to have a great start, and I think that this team will continue having the sustained speed they've had. They've had a great start to 2025, and I do think that will continue for the next couple months. I think it's been a great start for the team this year, and I think that speed will continue for a lot of the remainder of this year. I love what I'm seeing from the 23 team. They're off to a fantastic start in 2025. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Day. Now, we already knew this was going to be happening, but Corey Day will, of course, make his anticipated NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Martinsville Speedway, driving a number 17 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This will be the first of 10 scheduled starts that Corey Day will have in this car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, taking a majority of races in this car. Now, Corey Day, of course, has made 2 or 3 Craftsman Truck Series starts at the beginning of 2025, and so far they have not been the most inspiring runs. He did, of course, qualify on the pole at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the Truck Series race, but fell out throughout the field, and then they got caught up in an incident and fell multiple laps down. And then at Home City, qualified mediocre and ran around 15th to 20th most of the day. Now, we don't really know how he's going to do because this is a very fast car. Of course, Kyle Larson dominated Homestead Miami Speedway and probably should have won the race. And thank you, Sam Mayer, for screwing him out a win there. And then Alex Bowman had one of the fastest cars at Phoenix, but got put in the wall by Eric Almirola. I don't realistically for Corey Day see him going to victory lane because, one, Corey Day I don't think is as good of a driver as Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman. But we do have to remember one important thing is that Corey Day is a rookie, and he's only had about 10 or 15 oval starts on a normal pavement start. It's not really an excuse, but when you have a lot of lack of experience compared to other drivers in the field, you're not going to perform very, very great. By the end of the year, we need to see him really step up and get to that next big level, and I think there's definitely a chance for Corey Day to do that this year. But we need to see him go from being 15th to 20th on speed to around that 10th to 11th place. I think if he can increase and improve his starting positions and get better, I think then there's a chance and opportunity he will be that next big thing because there's a lot of speculation about Kyle Larson's future right now and we don't know how long Larson's going to race. If Corey Day wants to take that seat, he really needs to start setting it up to that next level. Still, a really big deal for Corey Day, though, and I think it's a great opportunity, and I think that Corey Day could have a very strong run, but I'm not expecting too much. We'll see how he ends up doing, and we'll see if Corey Day can run very strongly and very, very well at Martinsville this weekend and see how he can do in a lot of his other races later this year with that organization at Hendrick Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about safety culture. As it was announced on Wednesday, we did a video covering this on the channel, but it was announced on Wednesday that Safety Culture will sponsor Shane Van Gisbergen once again in 2025. They are going to sponsor SVG for 7 races this year. His first race will be in 2 weeks at Bristol Motor Speedway. After that will be at Talladega Super Speedway the next couple weeks. Then he'll race that car at Texas Motor Speedway, then at Kansas, then at Michigan in June, and then Mexico City in June as well. And then the final race will be at Pocono Raceway. Safety Culture did sponsor SVG for a couple races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. I do want to correct something. I did say he did have that car when he did run it at Portland. I was wrong. Quad Lock was on the car. I did want to apologize for that. But Safety Culture did sponsor him for some Xfinity Series races last year, and of course they did sponsor him in some Cup Series races in select events in 2024 as well. I think they sponsored him maybe at Daytona if I remember correctly, and there were a few other races they sponsored him as well. Safety Culture has been associated with SVG for the last couple of years. They also are going to sponsor Ross Chastain, I believe, at Watkins Glen or Daytona in the summer race if I'm not mistaken, so they're expanding their sponsorship on that front as well. For SVG, it's been up and down start to 2025. We know that he hasn't had the best pace and speed on the ovals, which we kind of expected with a 30.8 average finish on the ovals. I do think he is going to get better, and we're going to a race where I actually think SVG could be a solid underdog pick, considering he did finish 12th at Martinsville last year in the fall. I don't see SVG going out there and winning this weekend, but I think he will have a solid top 10, top 15 performance, and I think he could show some good speed. But as for Safety Culture coming on and sponsoring him, I think it's a really, really big deal, and I think it's great to see that they're going to be stepping up to the plate and sponsoring him for around 7 races in 2025. So WeatherTech is still going to sponsor a lot of races, including this weekend at Martinsville, but I do think that it's a pretty big deal to see Safety Culture coming in and sponsoring some races later this year, and I think it's nice to see that we're going to see a new not technically a new sponsor, but I think it's a big deal to see that we're bringing Safety Culture in, and great to see that he won't have to rely on WeatherTech as much for more races this year. They're still sponsoring Countersuit later this year for more races, including, I believe, this weekend. Oh, actually, no, that's not true. They sponsored one of those other companies are sponsoring this weekend. But I think it's a big deal. The safety culture stepping up and sponsoring Shane Van Gisbergen for 7 races. And, of course, they will be sponsoring Ross Chastain for 1 race later this year. Great to see them stepping up for some races this season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. As expected, it was confirmed yesterday morning that Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson are going to start swapping rides starting at the upcoming Formula One race at the Japanese Grand Prix. Yuki Tsunoda will go over to Red Bull starting there and I believe will drive for the remainder of the season effective immediately, while Liam Lawson will go over to the V-Carbon Racing Bull organization for the remainder of 2025. This has been expected and a lot of people were speculating this was going to happen for the upcoming Japanese Grand Prix, and now it was officially confirmed. I look at this move and this situation and I knew this was probably going to be coming, and when I looked at this situation, I was really frustrated for a lot of reasons. Number one, I do think that Yuki Tsunoda is a better driver than Liam Lawson. Yuki Tsunoda outperformed Liam Lawson in quite a few races in 2024 when they raced against each other. So when they put Liam Lawson in the car originally and not Yuki Tsunoda, I was definitely confused until you kind of look at the manufacturer side of things with Ford coming in 2026. That was the only logical explanation I can think of why they didn't put Yuki Tsunoda in the first place. However, what I don't really like here is the fact there were only 2 races into the Formula One season, and we're already making a driver swap and a driver change. I'm never a fan of when a team, especially early in the season, makes a move like this. I don't think that's fair to Yuki to have all this pressure on him, and I feel bad for Liam Lawson because, yes, Liam Lawson wasn't doing a fantastic job, but also the Red Bull car isn't great right now. I mean, Max Verstappen, who is one of the best drivers in F1 history, who's won 4 straight championships, has been complaining about that car every single race. He was complaining about it last year. Your former driver, Sergio Perez, was complaining about it as well. But you didn't listen to him because Max Verstappen was doing great. Also, they wanted Liam to drive like Max. And Max is a different breed. You can't drive like Max Verstappen. No one can drive like Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's his own driver. So to expect him to drive the same as Max, it was mind-boggling to me and really frustrating. So I feel for Yuki here too because I'm worried Yuki may lose his seat. Who are they going to choose next? Isaac Hadjar? Are they going to put him behind the wheel? Are they going to get Franco Colapinto to drive the Red Bull? What are we going to do at this point, Red Bull? Make up your minds. Their culture is just really bad over there right now. I don't understand. Like, the only time I can think of at least going from the NASCAR side is when Phil Parsons got taken out 3 races in the year and Ernie Irvan took over, which ultimately was a good decision at the end of the day. But I just don't understand some of the decision-making the Red Bull Academy is. And they've lost big-name personnel, and I think it's because there's a lot of toxicity over there. And it's just, I don't like that they're making this change 2 races in the season. If this was race 11 or 12, I would understand it if Liam isn't getting better. But he didn't have enough of a sample size, especially since Liam, has raced here in Japan. Why not give him a chance and opportunity to see what he can do in the Japanese Grand Prix? It was really frustrating to see something like this happen. I feel for Liam, and I'm worried Liam's even going to lose a seat at Racing Bulls at this point because he may lose a seat because of that. And I just don't understand making the driver change this early in the season because I don't think you need to make a driver change that early. I'm glad Yuki's getting an opportunity with Red Bull, but at the same time, I feel for Liam because it's way too early in the season to be making this driver change, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch and Brexton Busch. Now, of course, the big story was talked about, but it was announced earlier in the week that Kyle Busch and Brexton Busch were going to be competing against each other on Wednesday night, and they both ended up racing against each other. And we all were kind of thinking who was going to win. Was it going to be Kyle Busch or was it going to be Brexton Busch? A lot of people thought that Brexton was going to beat the older man, Kyle Busch. Well, that did not end up being the case when they raced at Millbridge. Kyle Busch, who doesn't have as much experience as his son Brexton in these cars, Kyle Busch got behind the wheel and finished in 3rd place. We don't know who won the race exactly, but Kyle Busch finished in P3, while Brexton ends up finishing in P6. So the driver, the older man, the dad, ends up beating the son. So the teacher beats the student. That's exactly what happened here. And I think it's pretty cool that Brexton was as competitive as his dad, because they're actually both really close to each other throughout the event. But for Brexton to be as competitive as his dad, I think is actually a really, really big deal. Now, Bob Pockrass also did an interview very recently with Kyle Busch about the long-term future for Brexton, and there were some very interesting quotes. Now, I'll also talk about Kyle Busch getting off the track and racing here and getting his mind off Martinsville. Kyle Busch's mind is not off of Martinsville currently at the moment, and his focus is on that. But he also gets a chance to step back and race against his son, which I think is fun for him. But what is the long-term plan for Brexton Busch? Well, there's some interesting stuff that was revealed in this article. It's kind of similar to what was announced Kyle Busch revealed back in 2023. The long-term plan is that Brexton is still going to be looking to run some truck series races when he does turn 16 years old, while Brexton and Kyle will share a truck around 2031 to 2032 when Brexton does turn 16 years old, because you do have to be 16 to run in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Kyle will run all the bigger tracks, while Brexton will run all the smaller tracks. So that would mean that if it is the case, and we do see this, Kyle Busch would probably retire in the Cup Series around 2031 to 2032. So that would mean we probably have about 5 or 6 years for Kyle Busch to be in the NASCAR Cup Series. Think about the long-term future, though, for Kyle. There's a lot of questions about whether Kyle Busch is going to be with RCR after this year. There's a lot of talk that Kyle Busch could leave RCR at the end of the season and may go back to like a team like maybe go to Spire Motorsports, considering he does have association with that team. That's one team they're looking at. But the one interesting thing that was also revealed is that Brexton Busch's long term is to go Cup Series racing. Well, Brexton Busch, we need to talk about this for a second. He will turn 10 years old, I believe, later this spring. I think in April or May he will turn 10. So he will have to wait at least another 8 years to go Cup Series racing, because you can race in Cup once you turn 18 years of age. But realistically, we're probably talking about 10 to 11 years. At that point, Kyle Busch will be retired. He'll be around 50 years old. I would think realistically for Brexton, it is going to be at least 10 to 11 or 12 years before he is a Cup Series driver. I'm going to be almost 40 at that point when he does go Cup Series racing, because I'm 25 currently at the moment myself. And I think for Brexton, he is getting, a little bit older, about 10 years old. And I think that he will be racing some late models here in the not-so-distant future. I think about Keelan Harvick at the moment, right? Keelan Harvick, he's racing limited late models. Wyatt Miller's another driver who, of course, is a nephew of Dale Jr. He's racing limited late models. A lot of people are really hyped on that young man, which I think Wyatt has a lot of potential and a lot of talent as well from what I've seen. Granted, he's still very young. But I think that long-term for Brexton, it ain't going to be that long before you see him in a truck. I mean, we're only about 5 or 6 years away. I know it's still a couple years away down the road, but that's realistically not that far away from now. So I think for Brexton, it's pretty exciting to see that he's going to get the chance and opportunity down the road to race in a truck against his dad. And I think it's a pretty cool story, all things considered, right? Because I think we want to see Kyle and Brexton race against each other. And I think it's going to happen here very soon, where we do get to see both of them compete against each other going into the not-so-distant future and going forward. So we'll see what happens long-term for Brexton, see if he continues racing. It seems like Brexton is excited about racing still. But we're going to have to see what happens in the next 5 or 6 years from now. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about all the NASCAR throwbacks that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. There's been some really awesome throwbacks, and I think majority of throwbacks that were revealed over the last couple days, I think have generally been really good outside of a couple. So let's go through all the throwbacks that have been revealed. The first throwback that was officially revealed was on Wednesday, when William Byron will be doing a Jeff Gordon throwback to Jeff Gordon's 2015 final ride race when he drove the number 24 car at Homestead Miami Speedway. And of course, what's really cool about this is Exalted is stepping up in sponsoring. This car looked really, really awesome. Hendrick knocked this one out of the park. The colors match pretty well. It looks really awesome, and I think Hendrick Motorsports did a fantastic job on this throwback for William Byron that we're going to see at Darlington. Next, we're taking a look at Ryan Ellis's 2025 throwback, which will have Southern Elevator on the car. This is a throwback to his time when he drove in the midgets in 2001 when he was driving around the Charlotte Speedway, his Legends car. This looked really good. I think that Alpha Prime knocked this one out of the park. The color scheme looks perfect, and I think they did a fantastic job on this throwback. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Parker Retzlaff's throwback to Ernie Irvan from around 1990 to 1991. They knocked this one out of the park. The Kodiak look, the branding, everything about it looks fantastic. The colors look great. They look solid. The Kodiak look, it's one of my favorite throwbacks I've seen so far this year. The next throwback we're taking a look at is William Sawalsh's throwback to Kyle Busch's 2016 NOS Energy car. That car won 10 races in 17 starts that Kyle Busch made, and I think they knocked this one out of the park as well. I think Joe Gibbs had some really good looking ones this year. I think it looks really, really good, and I think that this scheme will really pop on the racetrack when we get to the race next week. The next one we're taking a look at is Kyle Larson's Terry Labonte throwback to his 2003 Southern 500 win. This is one I've been wanting for a very, very long time. Hendrick knocked this one out of the park. The colors look great. It looks fantastic. They nailed it. It looks fantastic. The colors pop so well. And the go get your cars or whatever's on the side of the car, it looks great. And the cars are just really good on this one. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Cole Custer's throwback to Jimmy Spencer's 2002 car. They did a fantastic job on this one with the guidelines and everything. The colors match. They pop. They look really, really good, and I think it's one of the more underrated schemes in history of the sport. This is a really nice looking and fantastic throwback from Haas Factory Team and Cole Custer. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Alex Bowman's throwback to Jimmy Johnson's 2012 Southern 500 win. This is, of course, going to be the 200th win for Hendrick Motorsports. I like this one. I think it's too busy on the front of the car. Personally, it's my third favorite of the Hendrick cars that have been revealed so far. I think it's a solid one, but it's one of my least favorite from the Cup side at this point, but I still think it does look pretty good, but they've ran this one before. We've seen it multiple times in the past. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brennan Poole's 2025 throwback to Jeff Gordon's 2001 Looney Tunes car. Everything about this is great. The contingency sponsors on the side look very, very good. The colors work perfectly. Alpha Prime did a fantastic job, and Ryan Passan, a shout out to him, because I think his throwback schemes for this year are great. This one is really good. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Seek's throwback to Ricky Rudd's 2002 car. Shout out to Night Owl for this one. They nailed this one. The colors look great. The number is correct. The colors look fantastic. They pop, and it looks really good, and will be awesome to see it out on the track when we get to Darlington. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Ryan Seek's throwback to Dale Jarrett's reverse scheme from 1999. Once again, they nailed this one. Looks really, really good. Ryan Daly did a fantastic job on design for this scheme. This looks really great. It's a good, iconic looking car, and I love the white, the blue, everything about the scheme. The next throwback paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's throwback to Rick Ferkel. He'll have the 20 and the 19, so he's going to run the Xfinity Series race as well. I really like this car. The colors pop on this one. They look really great. They look fantastic. It looks amazing, and I think both of the cars look really, really good. The next throwback we're taking a look at is Brandon Jones' throwback to Matt Kenseth's 2003 car. Again, Joe Gibbs knocked this one out of the park as well. The colors work very, very well. It's very creative, sophisticated, everything you like about a scheme. This looks really awesome, and it'll be great to see out on the racetrack at Darlington. And the final throwback we're taking a look at is Daniel Dye's throwback to Adam Petty's car from 1999, the number 45 stripe machine. This one looks really, really awesome. I think that Cog knocked this one out of the park. The colors pop. They do very, very well, and it's going to be exciting to see them do a throwback and a tribute scheme to Adam Petty. It looks really, really awesome. My favorite throwbacks, I got to say, are the Kyle Larson one for sure. Brendan Poole's one looks really, really good. I love the Brandon Jones one. That looks awesome. And I think there's been some other ones that have been really good, including the William Sawalich one. I think there's been some nice looking throwbacks for the year, and I think they all look very, very good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about the lawsuit between NASCAR 2311 and Front Row Motorsports once again. As it was officially confirmed last night that 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports have filed to dismiss NASCAR's counterclaim against the two teams. They released a lot of the documents, and there's some interesting stuff that was revealed through. Beginning with the introduction, NASCAR's retaliatory counterclaim is an act of desperation that cannot withstand a motion to dismiss. It does not allege the facts necessary to state a claim. Instead, NASCAR is using the counterclaim to engage its litigation gamesmanship with the transport objective of intimidating the other race teams by threatening them with severe consequences if they support plaintiff's challenge to the unlawful NASCAR monopoly. What that means is that basically NASCAR is threatening the other teams that if they try to join the lawsuit, like teams like RCR perhaps, or Hendrick Motorsports, or like Joe Gibbs Racing, or any of those teams, NASCAR could threaten them with taking away their charters, which is very much illegal on their part. NASCAR's lead counsel used the filing of a counterclaim as an occasion to conduct a press conference in which he delivered a warning on NASCAR and the charter system that the racing teams depend on if plaintiffs prevail in their antitrust claims. We already already talked about this recently, but of course NASCAR said publicly they do want to go ahead and remove the charter system altogether. And I think that's a bluff on NASCAR's end because they don't want the other teams going ahead and supporting them in regards to their counterclaim. But there's more in regards to this introduction. Front Row Motorsports Incorporated, which is Front Row, fully joins in all of the arguments presented in the memoriam in support of the motion to dismiss filed by 2311 Racing and its owner Curtis Polk. The motion demonstrates why NASCAR's counterclaim, it fails to allege a violation of Section 1 of the Sherman Act against any of the counterclaim defendants, and NASCAR's request to eliminate the long-held rights of guaranteed entry for the charter teams should be strictened. With the respect to Front Row, the complaint must be dismissed for the further reason that NASCAR does not allege any specific conduct by Front Row or its owners or employees that support a claim that has participated in any alleged conspiracy. Rather, the only specific non-conclusory factual allegations about Front Row is a counterclaim or Front Row participated in the Race Team Alliance, a decade-old trade group that, of course, the owner and team owners who conducted NASCAR have never been challenged. But mere participation in trade organization does not violate Section 1, and it's not sufficient to show that Front Row participated in any alleged conspiracy perpetually organized by the RTA or Mr. Polk. Indeed, the counterclaim concedes that Front Row was not a member of the team's negotiation committee, which engaged in a voluntary joint negotiations with NASCAR over the 2025 charter renewal that NASCAR now claims constituted a Section 1 conspiracy. And there are no specific allegations in the counterclaim to possibly claim that Front Row was a participant in the alleged conspiracy. Front Row's motion to dismiss thus cannot be granted on this ground alone. Obviously, we know that NASCAR filed a counterclaim recently against the teams, but basically saying that they have violated Act 1 of the Sherman Trust Act, which, by the way, when you look at the articles that they use and some of the stuff that they use things, basically other like conspiracy things like Sportskeeda, among other big companies. They use clickbait articles part of their lawsuit, which is one of the reasons why they probably should drop this lawsuit and counterclaim as a whole. And I'm not surprised to see that 2311 and Front Row are filing a motion to dismiss this counterclaim by NASCAR, which honestly, I can't blame it because I think this countersuit is absolutely ridiculous. And one of my theories is that in regards to this countersuit, NASCAR does want to go ahead and delay this as far as possible. And we've talked about this, but NASCAR also wants to remove the charter system completely. But here's the problem. You've got 13 other organizations like Joe Gibbs Racing, like Hendrick Motorsports, like Trackhouse Racing, and all their drivers of SVG, and all of them, they basically filed that. And then you got this appeal stuff going on, which the appeal is supposed to be heard, I believe, in the next couple months, I'm pretty sure, for the charters that the organizations that are part of the lawsuit for 2011 Front Row have, which they do need those charters to compete for the season. For the drivers of Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Riley Herbst, and then, of course, Zane Smith, and Corey Haim's affected by this as well, Todd Gilliland, and Noah Gragson. They needed those charters in that preliminary injunction to compete full-time for the season. Otherwise, all those drivers would have been looking for seats headed into 2025, which would have been really unfortunate for those teams and organizations that had drivers signed for the 2025 season, because majority of those drivers, I think every driver has a thing in their clause and their contracts where they are required to have a charter for the season. So that's one of the reasons why that they are filing this currently at the moment, and rather filing this countersuit and these counterclaims at the moment. To me, when I look at this situation for NASCAR's end, I think this is a clear day situation where NASCAR, because they're filing the counterclaim and the countersuit, they probably feel like right now they're not winning the lawsuit currently at the moment, which is why they filed the countersuit at the first place. Now, will NASCAR, will Kenneth Bell and the other people involved in the lawsuit, will they go ahead and budge and say, yeah, we don't think that this countersuit is legit and we think it's a little bit ridiculous? That is certainly possible, and I could definitely see that going down the road of them getting rid of this countersuit, because we're expecting to hear this if this does go all the way to the trial, which the trial is expected to be on December 1st. We do know that that will probably be used in their countersuit. So it's going to be a big day when we do get to December 1st. Regardless of what happens, there is going to be a big impact. And one of the things that NASCAR also does not want to do is they don't want to open up their books. If they try to open up their books, it would really, really be a bad situation. We know that Michael Jordan also, and we've talked about this recently as well, Michael Jordan is not very happy with NASCAR currently at the moment, to the point where Michael Jordan is not planning to show up to any racetrack until we get to the playoffs later this year, which that is really unfortunate and a bad look for the teams itself too. To me, when I look at this situation and this front right now, I don't really like what's going on for NASCAR, and it's really a bad look for NASCAR too. They did file this countersuit, and the fact that they do want to potentially remove the charter system altogether, again, I think it is a bluff on their end. I don't think NASCAR is really interested in fully getting rid of the charter system. I just think that NASCAR is trying to find a back-ends approach, and they're trying to find a way to win the lawsuit in their argument, which again, I don't think they really have a great argument here to win it at this point. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens in regards to the remainder of the countersuit and the lawsuit going forward, because I think there's going to be more updates as we get closer to the trial, which again, at this moment is December 1st, and it sounds like they want to get this trial all the way done by the end of this year. So we'll see what happens with the remainder of the lawsuit going forward, but I think it's a big deal that the countersuit's going on, and I think NASCAR is just trying to find a way to stall this lawsuit for as long as possible going forward. So, that is going to be for today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts been the teams trying to file a motion to dismiss the counterclaim against them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what thoughts about all the throwback paint schemes we looked at today, and which one is your favorite? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later tonight on the channel, we are going to be doing reactions to the Truck Series race, and we're also going to have reactions more than likely to Xfinity Series qualifying as well. And then, of course, on Saturday, we are going to have reactions to Cup qualifying later in the afternoon, and we also will have the Xfinity review dropping later in the evening. And then, of course, on Sunday, we're going to have the starting lineup video for Martinsville. We're also going to have the race review for Cup, hopefully, depending on the weather, and we should have a Shane Van Gisbergen video going out. And then Monday, we should have a NASCAR news video dropping as well. We got content coming up, people like Haley Ding and Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Michael Jordan, the Lost Week 2023 11 front row, M&M's, FedEx, all that good stuff, Mavis Tire, Red Bull, Hooters, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel over the coming days. Junior Motorsports, Connor Zillich, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Frankie Muniz, Clear Farm, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.